It's my pleasure.
Yeah. So one of the things that we mentioned earlier this morning is we promised that we will get you entrepreneurs like Raj who would kind of share their stories on things that they've built, how have they built, all the failures that we could all learn from so that we don't have to repeat them, right? So we're going to keep this fairly candid and we want to understand what's worked, what's not.
Sure.
And I'm sure the bunch of entrepreneurs sitting here are going to obviously take away some learning.
Sure.
Raj, quickly get started. One of the things that we know is Vakilsearch is disrupting an industry that's traditionally not very digital or internet friendly, right? So talk about that journey. How did you guys think about it? What are some of the disruptions that you've done, especially as it relates to in the legal industry, and how you're making things simpler for lawyers and for people who want to use legal services?
Yeah. So Vakilsearch was started in 2012. So the main purpose was the archaic legal tax and compliance business that was making it very hard for businesses to start and operate in India. So the objective was to make this whole process and the ecosystem completely go digital, and to make India a great place to do business with. So that was the mission and the vision of starting Vakilsearch, and we have been pretty successful in that. We have now about 400,000 customers working with us. A lot of startups, like we end up registering about 10% of startups today in India, and our goal is to go higher and higher on that. So that's where we are at, and that's what we wanted to achieve.
So 400K customers in the time span that you've been in the business is amazing, right?
Yeah.
So talk about what's the secret sauce, because typically when we work with lawyers, we're kind of taken aback by all the legalese, right?
Yes.
How are we kind of simplifying this legalese, especially as it relates to startups? Earlier today, we saw Vijay sharing things that VCs include in their term sheets. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of unravel all of that for startups seated here?
So the whole thing starts with somebody having an idea and wanting to incorporate a company, right? So there is a lot of questions around incorporating a company, right? You would want to talk to someone. You would not want to understand whether a private limited company or an LLP or OPC, what's going to work for me, right? So there is a lot of human factors involved in it, and what we are doing at this point in time is AI enabling the whole thing, right? So having subject matter experts answer the question is great, but is it a scalable solution, right? How can we have an AI bot answer most of those questions? Because a lot of startup founders have basic questions about starting a business, and can we have that answer? So building a scalable model around technology where most of these questions are answered, and if the question is not answered. So for example, on the mobile app that we are developing at this point in time, questions would be asked by the customer, the bot would answer it, and immediately an NPS score is taken for that particular interaction, and if the interaction falls below a particular score, an agent follow-up is immediately scheduled. So it seems like your questions were not answered in a satisfactory manner. How can we improve it, and then what's the follow-up to be done, right? So so a lot of people do not understand when they start a business how would they go about doing compliance. Compliance is a major factor that affects MSMEs. So to give you some stat, there are about 45 million MSMEs operating in India today, and around 60%, 70% of them are not fully 100% compliant, right? So making them compliant, not only to run their business, but also for them to raise loans in the future, work with banks, for example, who are risk averse. So that's one of the key things that we keep working with our customers. This is something that's not that you cannot do away with. You have to do it, and it's mandatory.
So interesting thing is you mentioned how you're using AI in the business to scale and kind of make this interaction much less with manual intervention. I think that app is called MySteno. One of those things that you're using.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you use AI in the business?
Yes. So I'll start with incorporation. So when you incorporate a company, the current workflow is that you need to submit a bunch of documents, and that document gets verified by a subject matter expert, an authority who verifies whether these documents can be submitted to the portal, to the MCA portal. So we are completely doing away with that. So the mobile app that we are currently working on and in the process of rolling out, what it does is it has image processing. It understands what kind of documents you submit, and it is able to extract metadata out of the documents and build a customer profile. For example, if you incorporate a company, you need to give your PAN card, and you need to give one more ID proof. So we are able to extract data out of those documents just from the mobile camera. So customer can just click their photographs of their ID proof, and also for address, you need to submit your electricity bill or your mobile phone bill or a bank statement. So we have built algorithms around image processing on these kind of documents, to extract the necessary information. And all this information is then put together in a format that the government requires and reprocessed as PDFs with a wet signature. The wet signature workflow is also built onto the mobile. So the customer needs to just sign on the mobile and documents get put together and get submitted on the portal. And web automation and PDF automation gets us there. But the AI part is in extracting the information from the documents the user submits. So there are a lot of different formats. We need to understand those formats. So it's something called as a templateless workflow, where we don't rely on some existing templates to extract information. The system learns on the go and it's able to extract information. And if it's not able to extract information, that's when a human comes in and is able to help there. With regard to MySteno was a project that we envisioned to take away a lot of overhead in drafting legal documents. So what happens is, typically in lawyers' offices, they have a stenographer to help them to draft legal documents. So that was a workflow that we thought about to completely automate with. So what this Steno app does is, it plugs into the Chrome browser extension, uses the microphone, and it uses the Google Assistant workflow. So it takes the snippets of your voice, sends it to the Google API, because Google doesn't allow us to record more than 20 seconds worth of audio. So that's how they limit it. But we tapped into that workflow, cut the audio that the user dictates into 20-second snippets, send it to Google, get back the text, and then we have set of post-processing engine that, say for example, if you say next paragraph, Google wouldn't recognize that. Or if you say an apostrophe, sometimes Google misses it. So we take that data from Google and then we post-process it, and then we have a couple of workers on the back end that have a WebSocket back to your editor that writes it back. So that's the technology that we use.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of interesting but equally complex things, right? So you're a CTO yourself, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I constantly grapple with, and I'm sure a lot of the people sitting here, is there are so many things that you could potentially use as alternatives to accomplish something, right? So how do you kind of, for your team, unravel all of this complexity and ensure that they're not kind of distracted by every new shining toy that comes from a tech stack perspective? So as a CTO, what's your framework? What's your best practice that you follow with your team?
So I think the previous panelists put it in a very nice way. So engineers always get fascinated with technology, right? They want to always try out the new toy that's out there. But have your engineers always work with the business. They need to understand what the business needs. So take them to those meetings. So there is no reason for engineering teams to be completely isolated or work in silo from the business, right? So one thing that I've learned is, if your technical team is exposed to the business and knows the pain of the business, then they would refrain from suggesting toys, right, or suggesting pet projects or pet peeves that they want to work on. If they're in tune with the business and they understand, like, okay, this is the pace at which the business wants to grow, this is where we need to be, this is the kind of traction that's going to come in, I think they won't be agnostic about the business, and they would actually be in tune with it. So have your technologists work with the business, and I think that's really important.
Got it. Kind of getting to the growth that you have today, I'm sure it's not been an easy path, right? I'm sure there have been setbacks along the way. Can you talk about a little that we could potentially learn from what's not worked well across all the decisions that you guys have made?
Sure. I'll give some thought processes around the industry that we work with. In legal, tax, and compliance space, the incumbents, so the power of incumbents in any industry, right, it's pretty big. So if you are going to disrupt an industry that's been entrenched in a certain workflow, and they do not want to change, especially with lawyers, accountants, and company secretaries, they have a certain mode of working, and they are really not very receptive to change. So the most important thing that has worked for us is to provide them value. You tell them that, okay, if you adopt this workflow, if you go digital, this is the amount of time saving you're going to pass on to your customers. And those time savings can help you in building your business, can help you in serving more customers in a reliable and more consistent manner. So value is really important. Don't get carried over by technology, right? And in India, especially with large numbers at game, like numbers and growth and everything comes into play. But if you're not doing that value, or if you're not giving the value to your customer, your history.
Sure. And one of the other things is, in terms of just technology complexity in the legal space, right? What are the services that you today offer? I know you have a booth outside as well.
Yep.
What are some of the services that startups potentially could work with you of the ones that you've explained? Which are the ones that you see most traffic or the need for today in the India market?
So with the Digital India initiative, a lot of things going completely digital. For example, GST compliance is something that businesses cannot do away with, right? So that's been the highest market uptake for us, right? So what we've done is like instead of going on an annuity kind of a plan for our customers, like where they have to pay an X amount of money every year, what we have done is we have realized the need for customers to pay monthly because every startup is cash stricken, right? Like they want to conserve cash. So what we have done is like we have rolled out monthly subscription plans for compliance, for GST registration, and anything to do with like for example payroll, right? Payroll is also a service that's being rolled out by us. So that's how we are helping the startup ecosystem by moving on to a monthly kind of subscription rather than an annuity.
Got it. Makes sense. Coming on to DigitalOcean, right? So you've been using DigitalOcean for a little time
For
now,
a year, yeah.
right? Can you share your experiences? What's worked well for you guys? What's not? What are some of the things that you would like to see from DigitalOcean?
So the main difference I would say between the big three and DigitalOcean is that it's very startup friendly, and droplets were really wonderful, right? With the big cloud providers, what you got to do is like you got to put together your compute, your disk, and you got to be always aware of the network egress that's going on, right? Like that's where Vakilsearch as a business, we actually spent a lot of money in the network egress traffic. So when we came into DigitalOcean, it was a really surprise that you guys offered like terabytes of traffic, and it is kind of pooled, and it allowed us to play with it in a. I mean, we could play with it, and it was pretty helpful.
Cool. Also, in terms of just takeaways from a business perspective, the non-technical elements, right? What are some of the key learnings that you would want to share with the audience here? Any things that you would call as best practices that the folks sitting here should probably follow?
Yeah. So always focus on data. So data is king. So what we used to do is Vakilsearch is like initially during the initial periods of time, data was not given that much importance. So that has come back and bit us pretty hard. And your core values are the ones that drive the business. So do not lose your core values. Profit and growth should be an aftermath and not the driver of the business. So that we are very clear. So an inherent value to the customer should be added to your core value. And remember that it's a marathon, not a sprint. You will have your highs and lows as you move along building your business, but you got to sustain, and that's what matters.
So interesting that you bring out values, right? So one of the other things that startups in its early stages focus less on is like just building the culture, and as much as they focused on building the product. What are some of the things that have kind of stood the test of time for Vakilsearch from a culture building values perspective?
So you go back to the 101s of your vision, right? So the vision was to make sure that we are making India great for business, taking out these archaic things that are pulling the businesses back, right? So every time we go back and we build something for the business, so we sit as a group and we understand like how is it different from what we did earlier? How is it going to add inherent customer value? Is the customer going to experience anything better than what they were doing previously? Right? Ask yourself those questions again and again and again before you build out something. Right? Any feature. So the mobile app that we are building at this point in time, we went to the customers. We asked them like, how would they want to use Vakilsearch? Right? What is the platform? Would they want to be on the web? Because traditionally we think businesses like they would have somebody working with them, and they would be more comfortable on the web. But as more and more entrepreneurs are coming onto the market, they are on their mobile phone. So it's a mobile first market. And they want to do everything on the fly. Typically, in incorporating a company, you would think that, okay, that might happen in an office. No, they want to incorporate a company from their mobile phones, right? They want to click pictures, they want to get things done on the fly. They don't want to waste time. So these are things that they think that it's a given. It's not something that's that should take effort to get done, right? So keep always in tune with your customers, what they want, and add value through that instead of investing a lot of money on technology or building something that the customers won't adopt.
Sure. And also interesting business model that you have is in as much as you focus on a B2B market, there's a B2C element as well, right? So across both of these, are there some growth hacks that have worked well for you in terms of getting to the 400K customers that you guys have?
So Libra was something that we tapped into the lawyer market. So that's a provider market that we tapped into. So Libra allowed us to build a system wherein the lawyers had inherent value and they were able to use it on a daily basis. So we used Libra as any customer, like a litigating person in India, a litigating citizen would be able to use something called as a follow my case feature. So a follow my case feature, what would happen is like they could follow their cases from their mobile phones. That was a pretty good growth hack. Another growth hack that we tried and it worked pretty well is like your company incorporation. When you want to start a company, you have to incorporate it. But ultimately, you want to run a company, right? So another growth hack that we did was like we gave away incorporation at a very low price point and brought the customer in, so that the customers are getting value for incorporating a company. But not only that, then upsell them on the packages for being compliant with the government. So that has worked really well for us.